Namaste. Greetings, everyone.
Namaste. Hello, Master Hector. Very welcome, and thank you for joining. I know you have a very busy schedule. You're just finished your retreat in Canada, right? So you're back traveling around the world. So thank you for taking time out to talk with us.
Welcome. It's a pleasure.
So, Master Hector, in March, you're going to be coming back to Ireland to teach two classes, right? Achieving Oneness with the Higher Soul and also
Mhm.
Inner Christianity. This is going to be your third trip back to Ireland or your third visit to Ireland in a short enough time. What's your experience of Ireland?
Ireland, well, apart from seeing a lot of green and getting rained on, I've enjoyed actually being aware of a lot of devas or nature spirits. Devas is the Sanskrit term for angelic beings. So in particular, when you took me out to nature, yeah, there were lots of them. And I thought because of that, it's such a wonderful place to experience healing. I think just walking through the prairies or meadows, already would clean your aura, apart from the rain and the wind. But it's just there's a lot of green devas. Now, green prana is, of course, connected with the throat. The throat is connected to the lower mind. So I know that by meditating out in nature in the greeneries of nature, that the mind gets cleansed. But the green also, actually, the heart chakra is also green prana. It's connected to the energy of being flexible, being accommodating, being compassionate, kind-hearted. So that's one of the qualities of the heart. So that energy, which I think mellows people down, is a wonderful thing to have around you. But I think you really have to go out into nature, right? Into where you have forests or lots of trees. Then it's good for your heart chakra. The cities are nice, but there's nothing like it to go out into nature. So that's my first you know experience. Like, wow, lots of devas, especially green devas. Yeah, but the second one is there's an ancient spring of spiritual energy. So in fact, I started reading about the sacred spiritual culture of Ireland, and I want to read more about that culture. I mean, before Christianity arrived there, Ireland already had a very rich, sacred culture, right? Except that they did not write it down. It would have been wonderful if, you know,
Take
they
notes.
wrote down a lot of it. So that energy, I think, it's a good source of energy. It's like a foundation, right? I mean, many things came later, but underneath that, you have this rich, still strong, vibrant spiritual energy. And I think that has to be tapped. That has to be accessed. So that's the second thing. That ancient spiritual energy, right? And the third thing is, I remember I was when I got into my hotel room, I was standing, you know, at the window looking at the rain and the green trees outside, and I was just asking Master Cho, Master, what do you want me to do here? Because for me, it felt like you know a time of beginnings, new beginnings. It reminded me a lot of when I first was sent to India. You know, like, okay, we had to start something, and so it felt like that. So I'm curious as to what that question will lead at least lead us to. I'm excited.
Yeah,
So when you invited me again for, these courses, it's like, well, yeah, why not? Let's do it.
we're
See
excited.
what the future reveals.
Yeah, we're very excited too, Master Hector, especially because we know the story of obviously when you went to India on on a secret or a certain mission with to spread pranic healing, right? So it was a beginning of something new. So very excited to see what that beginning of this journey is in Ireland, see how that involves or evolves.
Yes. And by the way, another thing, I felt deeply connected to the people there for some reasons.
Yeah,
It's like there's a certain ease to it. Like, you know, there's a blending of energy. So
yeah,
I kind of like that.
that's good, Master. It's good. It's good that you feel comfortable here in Ireland. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I apologize for the rain.
No, I think it's wonderful. There's something about, you see, rain, water is very much connected to the astral nature, right? The emotional nature. So when there's a lot of water, lots of rain, there's a strong tendency to feel a lot and to sense. But, you know, and also to get cleansed emotionally. But on a higher level, the watery element corresponds to the intuitive faculty, right? So, that's a good combination. It's like twin hearts meditation, right? Heart chakra, higher emotions, then crown chakra, higher intuition. And it's almost like a gateway to higher spiritual consciousness. So I think people there naturally, of course, would be sensitive emotionally, but also they could, you know, be guided and trained to, cultivate their intuitive faculty. So there's an advantage to such places.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, we're definitely cleansed anyway, for sure, with the amount of rain. So that's one thing for certain. Um, Master Hector, I'd like to start maybe talking about achieving oneness with the higher soul, right? This is one of my favorite classes that Master Choa develops, right? For many, many reasons. But it's also now available for general public. So for someone who maybe doesn't understand what this class is about or why they should take it, what would you suggest or what would you recommend if you were to explain it to somebody?
Well, I mean, it's worthwhile to receive get a copy of the book. But wait, let me backtrack because um, when I was working in India, I spent time in the Himalayas, and I when I was coming back from the Himalayas one day, I came across a book. I think it's called The Science of the Soul. But and the it was written by a Swami, a yogi who meditated near the source of the Ganges for many years. And when he came down, I think he came down to Rishikesh, he wrote his book. Um, and interestingly, in that book, the heart was chopped open, the physical heart, like that. And then inside, there's like something in the middle, and it's surrounded by rainbow colors. No? And then also in another illustration, the head is chopped open. And when you look in the middle of the head, there's another light, and it's surrounded by rainbow colors, right? So I was so interested about it. I brought it to Master Choa. I said, Master, look at this book. What are these teachings about? And he said, okay, these are supposed to be secrets. Yeah, so don't talk about this to others and so on. So anyway, I mean, I think a year or so later, he came up with this book, Achieving Oneness with the Higher Soul, wherein he clearly discussed the meaning of those things. And I was so surprised. And I thought, oh, this is not fair. He reveals it to the public. He said, well, according to his teacher, it's time to reveal these inner teachings to humanity, because the mind of humanity, at least some or many human beings, are ready for these inner teachings. So he said he decided to write the book. So anyway, the Achieving Oneness with the Higher Soul, essentially it just maps out, it provides an idea on our spiritual anatomy. You know, we have a physical body, we have an energy body with its energy centers, chakras, and then we have the body of emotions, which is popularly known as the astral body. Then you have the body of what we call mind, which we use when we think, when we study, when we plan our lives, right? Now, beyond that, beyond these four bodies, physical, etheric, astral, mental, there is what you call the soul, or the incarnated soul. So in that book of Master Choa and in this course of Achieving Oneness, Master Choa talks about the higher soul having another body. That body is called the causal body, right? Causal because the causes of your present life circumstances are actually found inside the causal body. They said the body of the higher soul is called the causal body, wherein the karma of the soul is found. So the karma of the soul is what you call the cause or causes of your present life situation, whether in the field of health or finances or relationships or work, you know, where you're born, your affinity to certain type of studies or work, right? I mean, we all get attracted to certain places to visit or explore. We all get attracted to certain books to study, certain teachers to learn from, right? Certain people to have connections or friendships or relationships with. So, of course, we also have problems with health and so on and so on. But all of this are found within the body of the soul. So that's called the causal body. So anyway, the important thing in this course is the incarnated soul, which identifies itself with the physical body, which leads to fear of death, for example. It identifies itself with the emotional body, which leads to, you know, disharmonious relationships, or it identifies itself with the lower mental body, which may lead to difficulties such as pride or self-delusion. The important thing is for this incarnated soul to disidentify itself from these bodies and gradually know and experience who it is really. And once it experiences itself as, you know, a being of light, not intellectually, of course, the first stage is to intellectually understand it, but to really experience it, right? That's a life-changing experience. You know, I remember when I first experienced that, I just experienced that I was myself light and expanding in different directions rapidly.
Wow.
When I came back to my body, I remember I knew for a fact that I was not this body. And actually, my fear of death gradually diminished or disappeared. So I don't know. My belief is, you know, our consciousness changes through direct inner experiences. I mean, you could read about stories and experiences of others. You could read about, you know, deep spiritual philosophy or esoteric teachings. But I think unless you're given a technique which you could then regularly practice, which will somehow give you some glimpses of these inner realities, it's very hard to say this is true or this is wrong,
Yeah.
right? I think you need the direct inner experience, or in the words of another teacher, he said that we need to reclaim, rediscover, regain our mysticism. Because, our present race is highly mental. We think, we study, we analyze, and that's all good. But the mystical part of ourselves, I think we need to rediscover that. So anyway, I think that's quite important. Then Master Cho said it's not enough to know yourself as a being of light or the soul. He said you have to learn to gradually experience your higher soul. So his analogy was interesting. He said the body of the higher soul is like the egg shell, and he said the egg white is like the higher soul, and the egg yolk where the body is produced. That egg yolk is like the incarnated soul. So he said the purpose, the long-term goal of any human being, he said, is for this egg yolk to unite with the egg white. It means the incarnated soul has to eventually merge and become one with the higher soul. Because he said, when we are born, the higher soul has a certain purpose or goal or objective, and it has a certain plan. And so throughout the incarnation, the higher soul tries to impress upon each one of us, the incarnated soul, right? To steer us, to guide us to certain, because Master Cho said if the incarnated soul uh, tends to be enslaved by, the physical instincts, lower emotions, and mind,
Yeah.
he said life becomes very chaotic. Life becomes confusing and overwhelming. It's in some ways meaningless. So he said it's very, very important to have that clear goal, that the main purpose of your incarnated life is primarily to evolve spiritually. It's good to be healthy, to be prosperous. It's of course good to have a nice house, nice car, all your needs being met, right? Have good relationships. But let's say we have all of this, right? Then we need a higher purpose, a higher meaning, right? Otherwise, if there's no more beyond all of this, then we tend to overindulge. You've got good food, then you want more good food. Then your health suffers. You have a nice possession, you want more of that. You become greedy, right? It's because I think we're longing for meaning. We're longing for something which, in the long run, will deeply and fully satisfy us. One of the problems in life is, and this is actually Buddhism. One of the problems in life is that as we move through life, when we acquire things, right? One of the difficulties is we experience that everything is ultimately unsatisfactory. I mean, they satisfy you, they make you happy, but only for a period of time. After some time, it gets old. But that's why we're constantly searching for something. Maybe it's here, maybe it's there. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it's so unsatisfactory that, in Buddhism, the Lord Buddha calls it suffering. We suffer because nothing permanently satisfies us. So Master Cho said the secret is in finding it in the spiritual life. So I like Master Cho's teachings because he is a proponent of balance, right? He himself was an accomplished business person. He was very successful, very prosperous, very wealthy. But at the same time, he balanced himself through service, through helping, humanitarian causes and through, spiritual teachings and meditative practices. So this course is like that. It talks about the three seeds, the three seeds. It means from the higher soul, when it incarnates, it extends a portion of itself downwards to create the energy and physical body. Then it extends another portion of itself downwards to create what you call the astral or emotional body. And then another portion of itself to create the mental body, something like that. So I love that part of the three seeds. Right now, before you ask me something further, I just recalled a story. I was living in I think I was living in the United States. I gave a presentation to a church. I was invited by a minister, but this minister is such a very eclectic person that he explored Eastern mysticism and philosophy and practices. But anyway, I remember at the end of the meeting, there was a lawyer who introduced himself to me and asked if he could see me. I said, sure. So we booked a private session. And of course, I asked, being a pranic healer, what is your problem, right? Normally people come for healing. He said, I don't have a health problem, but he said, maybe you could explain to me, based on your experiences, why. He said, when he is consulting with a client, uh, he said, while he's talking to the client, there's something, he said, which is larger than his body, and he would become aware of it above him. And it's like that is guiding him. Well, so he said, if he gives a false statement, that part, he said, it's a larger and bigger part of him. That part of him would say, don't say that, that's wrong. And if he disobeyed it, he said bad things happened to him, to his practice. And so he said over the years, he learned to follow that. And he could not understand what it is. So I said, most probably that is your higher soul, you know? So he was thinking about, okay, that makes sense. So So he said it's like it's been a guiding, unprotecting or protective voice for him, which he gradually learned to trust over the years. So Master Cho said this is one of the activities of the higher soul. He said it has the voice of truth, or what you call conscience, which would warn us, or which would sometimes it would give us a certain dream or just a very clear message. Don't do that, or do this instead. Something like that. So some people, even though they don't really have a formal spiritual meditative training, they actually have this already. And that's quite fascinating, right? I was so impressed by this lawyer story. So anyway, the idea is Master Cho said by meditating on the mental permanent seed, known in India as the blue pearl, right, which is found in the pineal gland area. He said it's a small particle of light, which has a dark blue glow, surrounded by rainbow aura or colors. He said through that, the higher soul is able to communicate to the incarnated soul and give its guidance. Of course, if the incarnated soul struggles or fails to take heed or follow, that inner purpose or guidance, then things become difficult for the incarnated soul. So, the incarnated soul tends to choose things wrongly or do things which are not wholesome. And then there's a repercussion. So in Eastern philosophy, they simply call this karma. But actually, karma is simply a guiding force to somehow lead the incarnated soul to a place where it can actually align with the higher soul, you know, be more in tune and be more willing to follow. Something like that. So it's good to understand karma in a very different way. Instead of, okay, negative karma is to punish you, or good karma is to reward you. For Master Cho, it's like, no, karma simply teaches you how to discover and follow the will of your higher soul. So this course is about that. So it teaches you, of course, simple physical exercises, breathing technique, and then the meditation part. It's quite a potent technique, meditation on the blue pearl. So he said, Master Cho, I remember he told me that with twin hearts, you tend to, when your consciousness expands, you tend to leave your body. But with meditation on the blue pearl, by the way, that is a technique. He said it leads to becoming aware of the higher soul. That's why he calls it also meditation on the higher soul. Something like that. He said this technique enables you to expand your consciousness while aware, remaining aware of your body. Right? Normally, when mystics expand in consciousness, they, they tend to really space out. They become unaware of their physical body, and they become partially or greatly detached from physical reality. You understand? So they start not caring too much about their body or their physical well-being or surrounding. But with meditation on the blue pearl, which is taught in this achieving oneness, it's like you're expanding in consciousness spiritually, but at the same time, you're aware of your body. So that means that you remain grounded, and capable of fulfilling your daily work and responsibilities, and you still, you know, enjoy good food, enjoy good life. You have balance. You still have relationships and hobby or, material things.
Yeah.
So Master Cho said it's a very good technique to balance. It makes you determined, focused, willful, purposeful, and meaningful in life. I like that.
Yeah, and thank you for explaining and taking time to go into detail about the class, Master Hector. I'm really looking forward to having you over to teach this. So,
By the way, the flame in the middle in the Christian tradition is called the Pentecostal fire. So, well, that's connected to the other chorus, right? So I think in the Bible, in the book of Acts, it is said that during the day of the Pentecost, they, you know, the Holy Spirit descended, and then I think the apostles had tongues of flame, right? Because of course there it's shown as a flame like this, but in the in many churches, like in Italy, sometimes you go inside a church and then there's this painting showing the Pentecost, and then they have above their head, approximately 1 foot above the head, there's this. It looks like a tongue, but it's made of flame. I mean, if I did not meet Master Cho, I would not have understood any of this. So credit to him. But yeah, I've read the Bible in my younger, especially teenage years, and I interpreted the Bible literally. But when I met Master Cho, he said, no, it's not like that. So shifting to Christianity Revealed, he said a lot of the teachings given to us by the Lord Jesus and through the Bible, he said, are symbolical. In fact, many of the teachings of the Lord Jesus were given in parables. And parables are exactly, symbolical spiritual teachings, right? So something like that. So Master Cho said you have to study many of these things in their symbolical form, not literally. So when you speak of inner teachings, whether Buddhism or Hinduism or Christianity or other lines of spiritual approaches, there's always an outer teaching and an inner teaching. The outer teachings, called exoteric teachings, they are meant more for the masses. They're meant more just to preserve a certain kind of social norm, social, like people could act with civility and something like that of certain good character. But he said for people, obviously, who, when they graduate from that, because after a while, people would not be satisfied with ritual, sacrament, outer symbolical teachings, right? People start to ask, well, why are we doing all of this, right? What is the meaning of all of this? And I remember as a child, we were told, don't ask. You're just supposed to listen. And of course, nobody would follow that, right? In the future, when people become really curious, they would ask, what is the real meaning behind this? So Master Cho said, when the soul reaches that stage of development, then that soul is ready for what is called esoteric or inner teachings. So the meaning behind the symbols, the meaning behind the verses, the meaning behind the parables, symbolical stories are given. But also the teaching, the inner teaching or practice is given. It's not enough to have an understanding of the inner teachings, right? I think it's important to have a technique or a practice. You see, it's something like this. When you understand intellectually the deep inner spiritual teachings, right? But you don't have a direct or real life experience. Mentally, you think that you know it and you understand it, right? But actually, you don't. We don't, because we don't have an experience. Essentially, we're just parroting, repeating what we have read, what we have heard, right? But it's not alive, it's not real because it's not experienced by us directly. And this is a problem because if you are a very scholarly person, but you don't have an inner spiritual meditative practice, there's no direct experience, then you think that you know it, and you tend to develop pride. We tend to develop pride, right? We tend to become conceited, we tend to become delusional, we tend to feel that we're superior, better than others, because we know a lot. But the reality is there's no inner experience, and therefore there's no true knowledge. So I think it's very, very valuable to have a technique, because when you have a technique, you regularly tend to it, you regularly practice it. From time to time, you will have glimpses of these things that you're reading about. And one of the things that we experience is that the direct inner experience is actually different from what you have been reading. I mean, you will truly understand what you have studied once you get the experience. I think these two really go hand in hand,
Yeah.
something like that. So, anyway, in Christianity Revealed, we talk about the inner teachings of Christianity. Master Choa, he said um, he has two goals, and the first one is to help alleviate the suffering of humanity, and that is mainly done through pranic healing and by engaging ourselves through humanitarian or charitable causes, right? But he said the second purpose, he said, is to elevate the consciousness or spiritual consciousness of mankind. I think this is very, very important, that constant spiritual evolution and experiencing of the inner life. I think this is what gives us ultimately a long-lasting, satisfying purpose. If you're very healthy and you have all that you need, but no spiritual life, then when your body dies, then what becomes of you, right? So there has to be a tending to that spiritual aspect and that material aspect, but in a balanced way. So Christianity Revealed is one of my favorite courses actually to teach. Yeah, because it helped me personally to understand more about the Bible. When in my younger years, I memorized a lot of verses. I read the Old Testament, New Testament, and over and over and over again. Then I became proud. I actually became a lay minister, and I used to debate with different groups and people. I became theologically entrenched. But then later on, I realized how foolish it is. It actually it created, in fact, not just pride but hatred towards others who differed with me. So when I met Master Choa, he said that is not the right way. If you spiritually evolve, you will experience more and more that kindness, that love for all. That separativeness, prideful attitude will diminish or disappear. So I like this course very much because it healed me on a very deep level.
Thank you for sharing that insight, Master Hector. Can I ask a question also? The time that you're teaching the class is just before Easter. The significance of Easter in relation to the class, maybe.
Easter. Wow. Easter. Well, Easter has become so closely identified with the death, and the coming back to life of the Lord Jesus, right? But when you study Easter, the traditions connected to it, it's really more than Christianity, but in esoteric Christianity, the birth of the Christ is the time in a person's life wherein the Christ nature. Remember, Saint Paul said, there is the Christ in you, our hope, our glory. This Christ nature, there's an outer Christ, a great spiritual master, a great spiritual teacher. In fact, this great teacher is known as the master of all spiritual masters and masters of men and of angels. So apparently even the great angelic beings are taught by this great teacher. And according to the inner teachings, each human being is daily blessed by this great teacher, whether we know it or not. So there's that great outer teacher, but there's also that energy within each one of us, which is called in Greek Christos, the Christ nature or the Christ force. So in Buddhism, they call this the Buddhic or Buddha nature, which when we experience, enables us to experience unity, not just with all people, but with all lives. Right? So there's a time in every human being's life wherein that energy awakens, and there's this experience of unity. That's the term which I prefer to use, unity consciousness, because you realize that there's something in you which is in everyone, which is not different, and therefore to hurt others is to hurt that same thing in you, because all of them are part of one thing. So, this Christ nature is activated or stimulated at a certain stage of development. The second stage in the development of that energy is symbolized by the baptism. That's a cleansing ceremony, which is actually in esoteric tradition symbolizing the mastery of the soul over the astral nature. You have to understand that the astral body, symbolized by the sea or the ocean, is sometimes very, very placid and peaceful, right? But at times it's just so forcefully violent. So in the same way, our astral body is like that. We are not always emotionally peaceful, right? Sometimes we're overcome by anger and fear and cruelty, hatred, and so on. So the baptism symbolizes the ability of the soul to dominate that, to make the waters of life still and placid and peaceful. Now, the third initiation, or the third symbology related to the life of the great teacher, the Lord Christ, the Lord Jesus, is actually the transfiguration, wherein he climbed the mountain with 3 of his disciples. So he took with him Peter, James, and John. So according to the Bible, when he was up in the mountain, his face became so full of light that I think they could barely look at him. Now Peter is the symbol of the physical nature, the physical body. Peter, the rock, right? Rock is mineral kingdom. It corresponds to your physical body. Saint James corresponds to the astral body. And Saint John corresponds to the mental body. So it means that in our spiritual development, each one of us are being asked to climb the great mountain of spirituality. And as you climb, you're going to bring with you the transformation of your physical, your emotional, your mental bodies. Right? And Peter told the Lord Jesus, Lord, let us build a hut. If you read your Bible, it's like that. So what is the meaning of that? It's such a strange statement, right? They saw the glory of the great teacher and the light on the mountaintop. And the disciples said, let's build a hut. It's almost incongruent, right? Do you understand? It's so weird. It's like for so many years, like I did not know what that meant. But in esoteric circles, that means when you achieve a great degree or height of spiritual illumination, you have to establish your life there. You have to establish your life and consciousness there so that you're operating from that height while governing your mind, your emotions, your physical plain living. Right?
Yeah.
So then it made sense. Right? And then finally, the crucifixion, the most difficult. This is the death of the lower nature and its ultimate sacrifice and absorption by the higher soul. And ultimately, the disciple becomes an offering and a servant for the world. So everything that you have, all the skills, the knowledge, the possessions that you have, whether intellectual, emotional, or material, financial. You're going to use all of them to serve. And according to the teachings, there is the divine plan to be served. And what is the divine plan? It's the plan of evolution, and the wise human being cooperates with that plan. So, and then, the ascension, well, the resurrection. So the resurrection, which is supposed to be the culmination of Easter, it's such an esoteric teaching, but it's the ultimate triumph of the divine nature over the material. That's a difficult topic it will need a long time to explain.
I'm impressed that you got so much in such a short space of time.
Yeah, well, we've learned a lot, but yeah,
Wow.
we've learned a lot courtesy of Master Cho. Again, without him, I would dare say that all, if not most of the things I have learned is because of him.
I recently asked Master Choa a question. I'll ask you the same question, Master Hector. What is the one lesson that's really stuck with you, the most valuable lesson that you've learned from Master Choa?
To establish an honest practice. You see, when you enter the spiritual path, you have classmates, you have colleagues, and you learn the same thing. And in the beginning, everybody's trying to do the same thing, right? There's a schedule like Monday to, Sunday. Some people Monday to Friday, and you follow it, right? But over time, as we keep practicing, life happens, right? And when life happens, you miss one day, you miss this practice, you miss another practice. And later on, it's almost like you're not in sync with your classmates, right? And you realize that they don't have the same problems like what you have. They don't have the same responsibilities or relationship, or maybe, who knows, responsibility or illness or that you have. So you realize that, yeah, you're given the same teachings and techniques, but you're going to utilize those things in just different scenario or situation. And so to establish an honest practice means, okay, this is your reality. Um, Forget about what they're doing, right? For you, how often can you really practice? And there's nothing wrong if you could only practice once a week or twice a week. Because if your responsibility is so heavy, you're taking care, for example, one time in my life, I was taking care of a very sick wife and a very sick baby. At the same time, I have to go to the market and cook and do the dishes and the laundry. And at the same time, I have to work. At the same time, I also have to heal them, drive them to the hospital, and so on. So during that time, my honest practice was to be a karma yogi. I had to be a servant. My meditative practice was so reduced to maybe just 15 minutes a day when the baby is sleeping. And for me, there's no shame in that because that's what life calls you to do, right? We serve, right, based on what we are confronted with. So for me, that's a very important lesson. There's no sense in trying to be better than your classmate. No, they're different. You have your challenges, but they also have something. You have to understand that in the early stages of spiritual training, it's like, oh, things are easy, right? Like teachings are, wow, this is fantastic. Then you're able to do the practices, right? But according to one teacher, you don't know it, but you're just reviewing the lessons you had learned already from your past. But then comes a stage wherein you're you're confronting your main lesson in that lifetime. And when that happens, the teacher said, you're going to go down to your knees and you're going to pray hard. And it will call your best effort, right, to surmount that life lesson. And during that time, you cannot be worrying about what other people are thinking or doing. No, that's not your domain, right? Your focus is like, this is what I have. This is the very best situation, which will, lead me to greater spiritual height. So let me master this. And I think that's where mastery comes from, through experiencing these limitations, whether it's health limitation, physical limitation, or some people have financial limitation, right? Some people have difficulties with relationships, time limitation. But through limits, right, we're able to maximize, we're able to master certain things, provided you really put an effort. Until you do that, that limitation will not diminish. But when you master what that limitation gives you, then you'll realize, okay, wow, now I could expand. Of course, only to be met by another wider space, but still a limitation. So it's always like that. It's always limits. You master that, then you set another limit. I believe that is true growth. I believe that that is an honest spiritual practice.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Master Hector. Solid advice, and I think a lot of people listening to that will really resonate with that advice, right? Because I think from my own experience, even sometimes we're maybe too hard on ourselves, trying to force practice in or try to do certain meditations, and to nearly where it becomes destructive, right? Where it kind of cancels you out nearly, right? Because you're trying so hard. But if you look at how you can fit it in and be realistic in your approach and, follow like the guidance you just said there, I think that makes more sense.
Yeah, and I think that's, I don't know. I've seen people develop a lot of guilt complex just because they could not follow a prescribed schedule.
Yeah.
But life is not like that. I mean, if you're meditating and then your child is running high fever, I mean, what is the right thing to do? What is the more spiritual or virtuous thing to do? To continue with your practice and ignore your child, or to tend to somebody who's suffering? I think the answer is quite obvious.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, we're very excited to have you back in March in Ireland. I really do appreciate taking time out. I could listen to you speak about these things all day, but I do know that you have a schedule and you've got a million other things to do, right? So I want to be respectful of your time and mindful of your time, because maybe you'll do this again in the future if we be nice to you. But yeah, in general, Master Hector, we want to just say thank you first of all for all your wisdom, knowledge, and passing Master Choa's teachings and being that vessel for us, right? It's been amazing, and the recent crystal class and psychic self defense were a massive hit here in Ireland. The feedback was amazing from everybody that attended, and we are really looking forward now to March for achieving oneness and inner Christianity to have you back in Ireland.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to it. And again, yeah, credit to the teacher and his teacher. And of course, Master Cho would always say all blessings come from God. So take care. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, Master Hector. Have a good day. Bye.